The first time I watched Maid-Sama, I was 14 and I had never purposely watched an anime that was in the romance genre. I had watched some Clannad with some confusion because I basically had only watched shonen and was wondering when they would start punching each other. I had watched Soul Eater and Naruto, and I had seen some of my brother's Gundam anime growing up, but that was about it. Maid-Sama was considered a must-watch at the time and a staple of the shoujo genre. It's my first real shoujo anime. It felt really good to return to those roots for my new channel. I wondered if it was still a must-watch in 2020 and if it's still as good as I remember. This is a retrospective on Maid-Sama, and I'm the shoujo curator. This is my new channel. Maid-Sama is an anime that was produced in 2010 and it had 26 episodes, and this year is its 10-year anniversary. I will not grace you with a full Japanese name, because I don't want to butcher it. It just seems wrong to disrespect it. It's created by the JC staff, which mostly made Food Wars and Toradora, Pet Girl of Sakura So, Golden Time, and it's based off of a manga by Hiro Fujiwara, and it's serialized in a magazine called La. Maid-Sama is about a student council president named Misaki who is turning an all-boys school into a decent place. She secretly works in a maid cafe for her job, and she's hardworking and catches the attention of Usi. He's a popular, aloof boy in her class. When he finds out her secret, he immediately is much more interested in her. Misaki thinks her presidency is in danger and that he will leak this news to the school and they won't take her seriously anymore. I believe this show helped us establish a trend in shoujo anime going forward for a long time, and with the help with shows like Toradora. To us now, it might seem kind of average and tropey, but it was more unique in its time. There wouldn't be those tropes without it, and I argue that it strengthened the appeal of the tsundere significantly. If we take a look at the art in Maid-Sama, it's actually pretty hard to find a high-quality version of it online until really recently, at least. It's on Netflix and Hulu now, but it's really at a weird aspect ratio, which like Orange Host High School Club is kind of like that too, and a lot of them look like a potato. Netflix and Hulu at least uploaded a Blu-ray version instead, and it's much more accessible. On this video, I might be using the ones that I can find though, so it might look a little bit more like a potato. The art isn't anything really special, and I don't remember even being blown away by it in 2010, and I was really spoiled by some pretty high-budget shonen projects. There's a lot of limited animation used in the show, and it's pretty noticeable, but you can still enjoy the art. The art at least does not hinder the show, but I don't think it helps elevate it. There were some interesting design choices made, though. The horrible lime green school jackets stand out forever in my mind as not appealing. They're iconic, but they're not attractive. Some of the hairstyles are a little bit questionable. They gave Misaki some really low, thin hair, which almost like reminds me of a mullet, and like because of how thick her bangs are. And Usi's hair is like twice the depth that normally it would be, so his head looks huge. The maid outfits are super cute, however, and especially the event outfits that they have. The proportions aren't horribly weird or anything, they're not stretched. The eyes are a little bit bigger than you'd see probably now. And then the black backgrounds are just really, really plain, and it's noticeable at times, and they reuse sets often. The voice acting is pretty good, no one is noticeably awful. Usi and Misaki, I think, do a very good job in particular. Please note I did not watch the dub, however, and I'm just reviewing the sub version, so the Japanese voices. There is a decent diversity in the cast, and I didn't immediately notice any of the voice actors. Yumi Fujimura is Misaki's voice actress, and she has a bunch of credits, but not from really anything I've personally seen. And most side characters and video game characters in anime movies are the roles that she has. The opening song of Maid-Sama I have downloaded, and it's on my car MP3 player, and it randomly plays in shuffle still, so I still hear it very often, the very first one. I love both of the openings for Maid-Sama, but the first one, Please Can You Keep My Secret, does a really good job of communicating what the show is about without giving everything away. It doesn't show you all of the best moments and kind of ruin the moments when you haven't even gotten to that episode yet. The endings are decent, but nothing I would listen to nearly as often. The OST is alright. There's nothing that really stood out to me when I was watching it. There's the singular main thing that would reoccur, which is alright after reviewing it. It's a little generic, but, overall, it doesn't bring the show down by anything. The plot to Maid-Sama is pretty typical for a high school romance shoujo anime. This does have spoilers if you haven't seen it yet, but it has been out for 10 years, so do with that as you will. The plot does benefit from two main characters that don't just have school in common, and that's the only place that they can meet each other without having like a convenient excuse. The maid cafe has much more unique chances for interaction, especially the events where they dress up as different things, like the Power Ranger-esque type of event. Their delay in getting together is not due to miscommunication, which happens in a lot of other shows, which can be really, really frustrating when it's like 40 episodes of them not understanding each other for just not communicating the way they should. It's due to Misaki needing to be honest with herself instead, and her not trusting men because of her dad leaving them. She needs to be strong for her student body, and it's the first time she's in love, so she feels vulnerable and confused. Usi's really patient with her. Yes, he does surprise her with physical affection once in a while, but he does not pester her to be with him in a relationship constantly. He just simply wants to be around her and see her reactions to things. He does hold back for her sake and does respect certain boundaries. He doesn't kiss her or anything when she isn't ready, and he lets her initiate certain behaviors. It isn't because of he said, she said situations or misunderstanding about behaviors that causes conflict. Usi's really consistent in his approach to Misaki, and it's quite endearing, really. It's a little disappointing that this anime is part of the trend where in the end of the anime they get together and they finally kiss for the first time. I really hate shows when it ends during the cultural festival with the fireworks, because I feel like for probably 4 or 5 years every single shoujo anime ended just that way. And then I always feel compelled to find the manga and read it, and at the time, none of them were finished, so I'd have to remember to go back several times and try to remember to finish them. In fact, I think Maid-Sama is finished now, and I have not finished it myself. For Maid-Sama, there's some potentially problematic plot points. A lot of scenes involve potentially having violence or sexual violence in them, and it's not as strong as it once was, to be honest. Usi often needs to save our strong Misaki physically, like every few episodes. They do at least have Misaki help herself sometimes, like there's a break into the cafe, and the person that broke in, she is able to fight off and save herself, but Usi's right there to know that if she wasn't able to, he would have done it. The next few times it does get a little bit worse, like the time when the other school president basically tries to rape her, and she shrugs it off after Usi saves her, and she seems totally unaffected afterwards, and even has a doki doki moment with Usi. Then there's the 3-day class trip with the boys attacking the girls that need help because they're going crazy, and they're afraid that they just have no control over themselves and they're just basically animals. There's a lot of potentially sexual violent things that could take place, and Usi also saves Miyazaki from falling, being hit, or having something fall on her in every episode that she isn't being attacked by a human. In fact, it's given me a bit of a complex that every time a guy does this for me, I get doki dokis, even though they're just being nice, and sometimes how it's portrayed in anime is insane, and there's no way it's possible. Like, there's a scene where Usi is on the other side of a volleyball court, and Misaki starts to fall over to the side and maybe potentially into the pole of the volleyball net or the lifeguard's chair, and he makes it from across the court, ducks under the net, gets in between her and the chair / pole, and is able to save her in time. So, some physically impossible things going on, but there's a lot of plot devices that can be pretty flimsy at times to build up the romantic feelings or tension, and they can also be excuses to have the characters have time alone together. They also couldn't come up with different reasons as to why Usi and Shintani are welcomed into Misaki's family home for some reason. They both found fruit that the mother dropped and apparently are welcomed in and to have dinner both at the same time. This mother really needs to stop dropping fruit everywhere. They also never talk about how Misaki got her job, why she accepted her job, even though she definitely has some issues about it and she hides it, and how her family feels about it, and they really generically drop things like, oh yeah, our dad left and he left us in poverty and that's why we live the way that we live, to Usi, like without a preface. They just drop it there for us. In general, the way that they deliver information to a viewer is definitely a tell and not a show. They are not subtle with their storytelling at all. As far as characters go, I think Misaki helped popularize the tsundere trend. She's a bit too perfect for my tastes, and she doesn't appear to have many flaws. She's hardworking, she gets the job done, she's smart, she runs a student council, she's strong, but she doesn't really express many negative emotions. The only thing you could maybe say bad about her, she has a temper, but it's not really framed in that negative way. And it's nice to see, because usually female protagonists for shoujo are not angry in this way, but I'd like to see some real flaw in Misaki. Usi's a little 2D in the anime since he appears to only exist for Misaki. No friends were mentioned really, no family. We see the inside of his apartment once, and there's just a cat. His talents are specifically suited to benefit the maid cafe, and they keep on alluding to him having a weird background and secrets, but they never make use of it, and it falls flat in the anime because they never do anything with it. I vaguely remember it having more sustenance to it in the manga, but if we're looking at the anime by itself, it really does not work the way that it probably should. They kind of explain it away by saying he's a perverted alien, but it seems more like an excuse to not talk about his background. Shintani is introduced as a rival a bit late to be taken seriously because we see Usi pretty much only in the first opening. The commercial cards, he's always featured. He's introduced first, and we know that Shintani is pretty much no threat, but just a plot device to help with the tension between the two main characters, which is fine, and it's all in good fun, but it'd be a little bit more exciting if he was introduced earlier, or maybe he was a first love. It would make it more like who's going to end up with her in the end. In the anime, it doesn't feel like anything's really resolved with Shintani. We leave him just feeling a bit disheartened after the fortune scene, and he was going to keep trying, and it doesn't really feel like closure for his character at all. Aoi is focused on quite a bit as a side character, and I can't decide how to deal with him. I can't decide if he's problematic, or not so much him, but the expression of him is problematic. He dresses in girls' clothes, and they don't really explain it properly. They say that he likes to dress in the girl clothes, but they don't explain if he feels like he is a girl. Does he just like to cross-dress like drag queens do? Does he want to transition? The conflict he has in his life over dressing the way that he'd like to seems genuine, though. And it's nice to see him stay true to himself. And they don't say it more like it's a trap thing like a lot of the other shows do, which is really offensive. And I think they handle it at least a little bit better for old 2010. When they put Yukimura in the dress, it reads kind of as hot. It's funny, a feminine guy in a dress, and it just doesn't really hit the way that it should have, or they tried to back then. The other characters in the show don't really show any true emotions or have any character arcs. I mean, Sakura stands out a little bit because she has a situation with the pop band that she's into, but it feels a little bit like a missed opportunity to build a relationship with Sakura and Misaki when the band members like Misaki and ignore Sakura, but the show isn't heavy on drama and they quickly move past that. Every other character is very one-note and is only important for an episode or two and then blends into the background, much like the Three Idiots. They're kind of like comedy relief at that point. Pretty much all the villains are very mustache twirly bad to be bad because they feel like it. In the show, it's very black and white, good or bad, and not much of the middle ground. The show is pretty heavy on the doki doki moments. There's at least one really cute scene with Misaki and Usi per episode. There's a nice diversity in the moments as well, and they aren't all like, oh, our hands touched, our eyes met, he accidentally brushed my hand. I believe that the beach scene is really memorable. It's still really clear in my mind before I even rewatch the show. Especially the hickey on her back so the others wouldn't see her in a bikini. The show does a really good job of creating memories for them to interact like this. They complement each other really well, and it's a 3 out of 5 for the doking rating there. There's a fair amount of them, there's a good diversity of them. Not my favorite moments, but it's still enjoyable if you're looking for a good romance. Overall, Maid-Sama is a fun-loving show, and it's aged to become a little bit more generic and predictable for us. But we need to remember that it was a trendsetter. Would I suggest it today to a friend if it was coming out in 2020? Probably not. I probably wouldn't have even watched it. But I think it's worth seeing what started the current trends. It's still enjoyable and worthwhile to watch, even with some of its problems. I like to watch some of the characters and they actually get together and they don't wade in the pools of constant miscommunication like a lot of high school romances do, so I do approve of that. I was able to rewatch it while attending to other tasks while on subs, so it's not the most complicated story, but to be sure, watching the chemistry between Usi and Misaki is memorable and enjoyable, and worth ignoring a lot of the other issues this show has. It's worth the rewatch, and especially since it's so easy to find now on Netflix and Hulu. Thank you for watching my first video. Bye!